Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this virtual farm field trip. We are live today in Lebanon, Oregon at Breeden Family Farms Nursery. My name is Lacey and I'll be the moderator today. Before we start our tour today, I wanted to go over a few logistics to make sure we have a great experience. We've muted everyone and everyone will remain muted throughout the tour so everyone can hear our tour guide clearly. If you have any questions, you can send them to us using the chat feature. Please only type questions to use in the chat. This will help us to see questions and ask as many as possible. It is now my pleasure to introduce our host and tour guide for today's virtual field trip, Derry Breeden. Take it away, Derry.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Derry Breeden. I am the owner and operator and founder of Breeden Family Farms. We are a plant nursery located in Lebanon, Oregon. We started 3 years ago in the year 2021. My wife and I were working in the nonprofit sector and the COVID pandemic hit. We had to take a leave of absence from our jobs, and it gave us an opportunity to think about what we wanted to do with our lives. And one of the big goals that we've always had has been to start a nursery. So we took the opportunity that presented itself. We put together a business plan. We went to the bank and we presented our presentation to the bank, and they offered us a loan so that we could purchase a property that was already an existing nursery. This property right here was formerly Van Essen Nursery, and Van Essen Nursery was a wholesale nursery for 45 years. We were able to meet with the owner and talk to him about what it would take to run a business that he was an experienced professional. He gave us insights, information, wisdom, and showed us how to do this. So we were able to get the money from the bank, the wisdom from the previous owner, and we set forward on this plan. So what you see here is our retail store. So part of our sales that we'll start with are retail sales. So Monday through Thursday, we do wholesale, and Friday and Saturday, we do retail. The difference between the two is the wholesale ships out to other states, and the retail, the customers come to us. So those are the two different sales mechanisms we have. With the wholesale, trucks come, we load the trucks up, and the trucks go to Colorado, to Utah, to Michigan, to Connecticut, to Texas, to almost every single state. When we do retail sales on Friday and Saturday, people in the local community drive their cars, they come and park here in the parking lot, and they look at the plants and they decide which plants they want to buy, and we sell them those plants. So let's take a little stroll through our retail store so you can see what it is that we do. Right over here, we have our veggies. And veggies are a very important component. People like to have gardens. We have all sorts of different leafy greens. We've got herbs. We've got Brussels sprouts. We have about 20 different kinds of tomatoes, about 20 different kinds of peppers, leafy greens, cucumbers, zucchinis, onions, pretty much everything that you would find in a grocery store we have here available. One of the things that we really like to do is promote self-sustainability. So when people are thinking about how they're going to put food on their plate, some people like to go to the grocery store, but some people like to grow their food themselves. So that's what this is for people who want to do gardens in their homes. Right over here, we've got some jalapeno peppers and some serrano peppers. As you can see, these are just getting started. So what we do is we take these, we sell these, and the people take it out, and you can see the roots right here. They plant this into the ground at their homes, and within a few weeks, we'll start to see peppers sprouting out. Over here, we've got some hanging baskets with flowers. These are annual flowers. Annual flowers are different than perennial flowers because they only happen once. Perennial flowers come year after year after year after year, but the annual flowers are just one time. So there's one summer where they're really beautiful, and we put those in a hanging basket. And if you have a mother or a grandmother on Mother's Day, it's a really good present to get. As you can see here, we've got some begonias. Over here, we have shrubs. Shrubs are an important part of landscaping, and mostly it's landscapers that come to find the shrubs for new construction projects or remodel projects or basic yard projects. People need to have shrubs that go along the driveway, provide hedges, fences, all sorts of things. And so this is this area right over here. And when we come back over here, another very important part that's similar to the veggies are the fruit program. So we've got fruit trees here, the fig trees. We've got blueberry plants. And as you can see, all these little white blooms are all going to be future blueberries. Every single one of those is going to have a little berry. And so there's lots and lots of fruit on each plant. We also have raspberries, and similar to the blueberries, each of these have little tiny blooms, and each one of those will become a raspberry. So we have multiple different varieties of raspberries and blueberries, figs, and a variety of other fruits. We also have small perennial flowers. And I was mentioning earlier, these are the flowers that come back year after year after year. So if you plant it, you can always expect it to come back the next spring. And these have beautiful flowers on them as well. So this is the retail portion. Let's go take a look at the wholesale sales portion. So as we walk over here, we'll be able to see the semi truck. Now this semi truck comes from a different state and has a driver that goes all across the country delivering product. So if we go over here, we can see the driver. He's waiting to get his truck loaded. And we'll take a look inside the truck as it's being loaded right now.
We do have a few quick questions.
Yes.
So what plants do you guys have, or what are your favorite plants that you have?
Well, some of my favorite plants are the hydrangeas. I like the blossoms. They look beautiful, and they provide both sun and shade. So you can really landscape it any way you like. If you look in here, it's a little bit dark, but we've got a team inside the truck that takes the plants and then stacks them together so that we fill the truck from the floor all the way to the ceiling, and we get as many plants in the truck as possible. We can get about 18,000 plants in there if we do it right. So that's the two different mediums that we do as far as sales: the retail, where people come and visit, and the wholesale, where we ship it and deliver it to every single state in the whole country. The plants come in on the pallets get lifted up by the tractor, and then the team inside takes the plants off the pallets and then stacks them on top of each other all the way to the ceiling. So that's sort of the end game where the plants get sold. But to create the plants and make the plants ready for sale, there's an entire process that we have to go through to get the plants to the point where they're actually ready for sale. So if we walk over here, we'll be able to see how that gets started. Now, are there any other questions?
Yeah, we have a few more questions. So how many flowers do you sell in a year?
We sell anywhere between 100,000 to just under 1 million plants a year.
Do any of your plants ever mold?
Yes, that happens quite a bit. So in the winter, when the plants are dormant and it gets really cold, it could open the stem to different sort of funguses. One of those is black mold that will kill a plant if it's not cured. So we have a multiple variety of different remedies, medicines. We call them pesticides and fungicides, herbicides, you name it, but it's plant medicine. And so we spray the plants with the plant medicine, and we hope that that cures it. We have to change the different medicines because each of the funguses will get used to the medicine and it won't be effective. And so we have to have a rotation of different fungicides for each season. That way we keep the mold guessing. So if we look right here, we have different mediums here. So we've got different types of soils, bark mulch, pumice, and each of these different types of materials are what we plant the plants in. And so we have a tractor that hooks up to this bucket right here. This bucket scoops up the different materials like the bark mulch, and then puts it in this mixer right here. So when we get all the bark and the pumice into the mixer, we then add fertilizer. We add different types of premixes depending on what kind of plant it is. And so each plant has its own recipe. It's kind of like baking a cake. Every single cake has a different recipe. So if we are planting blueberries, it has its own recipe. If we are planting hydrangeas, that has its own recipe. If we're planting roses, those have their own recipe. And so we have different levels of fertilizer, different grades of bark. So we can have a fine bark or a coarse bark, or we can add pumice, we can add peat moss. So all the different ingredients are very specific to the actual type of plant. And so it goes into the mixer, and then the mixer mixes all that together. And then from the mixer, it goes up this elevator and into the hopper. And the hopper then feeds that into the potting machine where we have a team that are doing the planting. But before we do the planting, we have to get the plants ready. And a lot of people think that plants all start from seed, but that takes too long. We just simply aren't patient enough. So we do cuttings, and cuttings are a much more quick way to get the plant started. So let's walk over here and I'll show you how cuttings happen. So right here we have English lavender. And English lavender is a very popular yard plant. So we take a look right here. This is the English lavender. Now, if we want to plant more English lavender, we need to take cuttings. And so I've got a team of professional propagators over here that know exactly how to take the cuttings. And we're going to take a look right over here. This is Dolores and Lauda. And so what they do is they take some scissors and they take just the tips of the plants. And so we look right here, these tips right here have all been cut to the perfect measurement for propagation. And so after they take the cuttings, they stack them up right there. We add what's called root growth hormone that starts the roots from the tip of the cutting at the very bottom. And when those get planted, we put them in propagation houses. And propagation houses are greenhouses that are specific to getting the cuttings going. And so all of these propagation houses have misters because none of these plants have roots yet. And so they can't drink any water. They have to drink water through the leaf instead of from the root. And so the mister provides enough moisture so that the plants can then get the moisture they need. So if we look right here, let's pull it out. Oh, it's in there. So if you get real close, you can see these are all brand new roots that came from the bottom of that cutting. All of these are roots. And so this used to be just the tip of a plant, but with the root growth hormone and the misting system, it's now grown roots. And every single plant in here was taken as a cutting. And what's very important with the cuttings is to know the seasons of the cuttings. And so some plants like to be harvested in the spring and others in the summer and others in the winter. So for instance, these hardwood plants right here, this is an arborvitae. Some people call it a red cedar. And this can only be taken in December. Whereas some of these plants can only be taken in the month of May. And so knowing exactly when the proper season is to take a cutting helps us be more efficient. And so that way we get about 99 to 100% of each cutting to grow roots. And that's very important because it takes a lot of time. So each of these arborvitae were taken in December. They'll be planted here in May, and then they'll be ready for sale next year in May. So it takes about 1 year for it to be ready for sale. So if we walk through here, we can kind of see all the different plants that we have, and these were all taken as cuttings. Right here, we've got some annuals. These are taken from the hanging baskets that we saw earlier. And all of these will then be either shipped out in wholesale to different states or sold in retail where the customers will come and we'll be able to talk with the customers about what it is that they're looking for, what they want for their yard. So these ones right here, these are all cuttings that we took. This is called the Pieris plant. And this one in particular is unique because we had a special request. So somebody called in and said, I'd like to put in a special request order. And what we do is we take these special request order and we custom grow. So some of the plants we grow just because we know that everybody wants them, but some of the plants people ask for. And so when they ask for that plant, we grow that plant. And so we had a specific customer ask for 15,000 Pieris. And as you can see, we've got those right here. So what's very unique about the cuttings also is that they're so small, we can fit a lot of them into the house. So in each one of these propagation houses, we can fit 30,000 cuttings in each of the houses. And we have 12 different propagation houses. So if you times 30,000 times 12, that's the maximum output of cuttings that we can produce each year. But because we're small still and we're still growing, we're only using 2 of the houses right now. But as we grow, we'll be able to use more and more of the houses. So if we go back over here, we can walk towards the outside area and we can look at the plants once they're potted, what that looks like and how they look in the greenhouses. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, we have a few more questions. So, what was the reason you dreamed of having a nursery?
Well, one of the big reasons that we wanted to have a nursery was because we wanted to move out of the city. We wanted to live in the country. We wanted to turn our land into our revenue source. So instead of going to work at an office, we wanted to use our land to turn it into money. The money then takes care of our lives. And so that was really important to us. So we were looking at different agricultural avenues. And one of the best ways that we thought to turn our land into money was to grow flowers and plants. And so that's why we picked a nursery.
Another question we have is, what is the most beautiful plant you have?
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so every single person has a different opinion. Some people think that ground cover is the most beautiful, and that's just a simple Irish moss. Some people think roses are most beautiful, and other people think that a green hedge is the most beautiful. So every person has a different opinion on beauty, and it's really up to the individual to decide what that looks like to them. For me, I like a big, beautiful bloom, and that's why I like the hydrangeas, because they have some of the biggest flowers, and I like to see those from a distance or up close. You can always tell it's a hydrangea.
And then what happens when one of your plants rots?
We'll typically throw it away. So if it rots, it's a loss, and we'll try and get it healthy. If that doesn't work, then we're not able to save it and it goes in the trash.
Another question we have is, how much water does it take to keep your plants healthy?
Lots and lots and lots of water. So one of the most important things when we were looking for a property to create a nursery was water rights. And water rights are essential for a farm, for a nursery. Without water rights, you're not going to make any money because you have to pay for the water. With water rights, you get to own the water. So in the state of Oregon, the government owns all the water. Government owns the rain, the water in the rivers, the water underground, all of it. And you're not allowed to take that water unless you have water rights. You can ask for a water permit, but it's not as good as water rights. So with water rights, we actually own a part of nature. And we take the water from the river that's across the street, we pump it underneath the nursery, and we put it in these tanks right here. So we've got them covered up still because not too long ago it was cold, and if it freezes, the tanks break open. So right here, we've got 2 major tanks. Underneath the ground is where the water comes from the river. It fills these tanks. Then I go to my computer and I plug in a code that then sends the water to each of the greenhouses that I tell it to, and it waters it for the amount of time that I plug in. So let's say I want to water all the greenhouses. Well, that process takes about 6 hours because we have 91 greenhouses. So I have to plan my watering over a long period of time. And we start the watering system at 5 in the morning, and it'll go on all the way into the afternoon. So each greenhouse gets about 30 minutes of water, and then it starts over again in the afternoon, and it gets another 30 minutes of water. And so the water goes from this tank and it goes underground and it goes into the greenhouses over here. So if we go take a look right over here, we can see some of the plants that just got planted. So let's step in. Yeah, let's go right in here. So these ones are brand new plants that just got planted. And right here, you can see these nozzles will spray the water down, and this will travel back and forth over the plants. And what I do is I come right over here, and it might be difficult for the camera to see, but there's a computer right here. And I plug in how long I want the water to go, how many times it goes back and forth. And that way I know exactly how much water I'm giving to each plant, because overwatering can be just as bad as underwatering. If a plant doesn't get enough water, it's going to get dry and it's going to die. But if a plant gets too much water, it will drown. So you have to know exactly how much water to give it. Any other questions?
Yeah, a few more questions. So what are your recommendations to have soil be ready for planting?
Well, the soil is pretty much ready because we have the recipes. And so we just need to have it in house. And so what we do is we have quarter coarse bark, medium grade bark, or fine bark, pumice, peat moss. And it's just a matter of having those here on site. We take the tractor, we scoop it up, and we put it into the mixer, add the different components such as fertilizer and premix, and all of those are ready. So it's like having a cake. When you have all the ingredients for the cake, you can just bake the cake. But if you don't have the eggs or the milk, then it's not going to work. So we have everything here on site. We order it, trucks come, deliver those, drop them off, and then we have lots and lots of each type of those things so that we can always have them on hand.
Another question we have is, do cuttings ever not work?
Yes, that is certainly a very big thing. So we have here on site one of the best propagators. And the person that does the cuttings, his job title is called propagator, because when you take a cutting, there's an actual verb for that, and it's called propagation. So the person that does the propagation is the propagator. And our head propagator is very wise. He has 20 years of experience. And because of all the years of experience and all the practice, he's put together a calendar of when to take cuttings. And so when it's the right month, each plant has its own month. Right now we're in the month of May. And so the month of May, we take hydrangeas, we take perennials, we take shrubs, and all those cuttings happen in May. And so if we take the right plants in the right month, we'll have pretty much a 99.9 to 100% success rate. But if a plant, if its month is May and I take the cutting in June, there's probably only going to be about 50%, half will live, half will die. But if I take it in September, none of them will survive and they'll have a 0% success. And so the knowledge and the wisdom of when to take cuttings is the success. So if we know exactly when the right time is, we'll have 100% success. If we do it in the wrong month, we'll have a 0% success.
What is your most common plant that you sell?
The most common plants? Oh, wow, that's a good question. I would say spirea. Spirea is a small yard shrub that's very common in different landscaping projects. When you drive around town and you see offices that have shrubs in their yard, there's a really good chance that one of them is going to be a spirea.
Are there any animals that help or hurt your plants?
Yes, absolutely. So we have what we call beneficials. And these are insects that will benefit your plants. And so when we have spider mites or gnats or whiteflies or any kind of invasive species that wants to eat and kill our plants, we can then get beneficial plants. And there are companies that grow these beneficial insects, and they grow these beneficial insects. And so they get delivered in these tubes, and I open the tube and I release the insects, and they go and eat the predators that are eating the plants. Other animals, such as deer, like to walk through the greenhouses. And it's sort of like if a deer went to a buffet, every single plant they could ever dream of is right here. And so they walk through and they pick out their very favorites. And they usually start with dessert. And that's the Annabelle hydrangea is their very favorite.
Another question we have is the lavender poisonous for pets?
No, lavender is not poisonous for pets, but there are certain kinds of plants that are poisonous. And so it's very important to know if that plant is specifically poisonous to your animal. And some plants can be okay for dogs and cats, but not for other animals. And some plants can be bad for all animals. And so it's very important to know exactly what those plants are before you plant them in your yard. Lavender is a safe plant for household animals.
Another question is, how many greenhouses do you have in all?
We have a total of 91 greenhouses.
And then another question is, how do you keep your plants safe from animals or pests?
Well, for animals, it's difficult because if a deer wants to come, he's gonna be able to enjoy himself. We could get a dog, but we haven't done that yet. So the deer have free range, and they do whatever they want and eat anything they want. But luckily, we have so many plants that it's not really noticeable. For the insects, we use different sorts of pesticides that prevent the insects from coming. But we have so many plants that it's always a battle, and the insects often win.
And then our final question, what is the hardest plant you grow?
Daphne. Daphne is very, very, very particular. It's one of the hardest plants to get propagated. It's one of the hardest plants to keep alive. It's sort of like a princess. It needs to be treated with absolute respect. And if you don't treat it with the highest respect, it will fall over and cry and cry and cry until it's no more. And so Daphne is definitely the hardest one.
Okay, our last and final question. What is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of the job is being able to enjoy what I do. And I think that is really important when you decide what you want to do with your life. If you love what you do, then you're going to be much happier and have a much more fulfilled life. And so enjoyment of being on the property, of seeing the plants get started, watching them bloom. Sometimes I go through the houses and I pick flowers and bring them to my wife, and she gets really happy. And seeing her smile definitely makes my day. And so really loving what you do and enjoying every moment of it is the most important part.
Thank you, Derry, for taking time to talk with students after growing plants as a wholesale nursery. And thank you to all the students in classrooms joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
All right, take care, everybody. Thank you so much.